3 weeks, Bein HaMetzarim, which begin with Shavas B'Tammuz and conclude with Tisha B'Av, are the time when the Jewish people, for the last 2,000 years, has not only mourned the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, but has also attempted to understand and come to grips with many of the occurrences, eras, epochs during its long Golus. There's no question that the events of the last 20 months, which began on Simchas Torah with the most terrible atrocities, murders, other terrible things, experiences which we have not witnessed or experienced since the Holocaust. And 3-4 weeks ago, although this war is not over, culminated in miracles of the like that the Jewish people has rarely experienced ever. And we don't understand, we don't claim to understand, and nobody does understand Chesbonai Shemaim, why Hashem does certain things. Most things we don't understand. But the Kadmainim, our Rishainim and Achrainim, have given us some tools to understand the broader outlines of Hashem dealing with the Jewish people. Ki gavaya shamayim me'aretz, as we say in the Haftarah that we're soon going to learn, just as the heaven is greater than, far beyond the earth, so too are Hashem's thoughts and ways, and this is not something that we can grasp. But there are things that the Rishonim explain to us. In addition to the terrible events of Simchas Torah in the few days afterwards, the over 350 soldiers who were killed since then. Imagine how many thousands of Yisaimim, children don't never have a father, wives whose husband is not coming back, and parents who lost a child. Those are terrible things that are not over yet. The outbreak or the explosion of anti-Semitism throughout the world has not abated. On the other hand, we did see, and we are seeing, open miracles. The fact that over 500 intercontinental ballistic missiles hit Eretz Yisrael in the period of a few days, tens of thousands of missiles and unmanned vehicles from Lebanon and elsewhere, and the toll, although every Jew is a world, is comparatively small. The fact that the Iron, so you're going to say, well, okay, we had the Iron Dome, but as the Toldus Aaron Rebbe said, I heard this a few days after Simchas Torah from his son-in-law, he said, my father-in-law said, why do we have the Iron Dome? Because if we didn't, then our emunah in Hashem would be so easy. So he gives us the Iron Dome. He says, now you got to work. Now you got to work a little to have emunah and betochen. But even that, the numbers The success rate in Israel is anywhere between 80 and 90%. These are facts. I didn't, And all over the world, where they're sold, there's half that amount. Something's going on over here. The fact that Syria, which was the impediment to directly bombing Iran, was in the way. In a space of 2 or 3 days, it just kind of like fell apart. Nobody even did anything. Clearly, there's a Yad Hashem here. And it behooves us to understand, on the basis of what the Rishonim say, what the message over here is. So, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 themes here. Number 1 is the Ramban in Parshas Ha'azinu, and I urge you to take a look at it. It is in Perek Lamed Beis, on the pasuk of Amarti Afehem. And the pasuk describes what Klal Yisrael is up to. Vayishman Yeshurun Vayivat. The Jewish people got fat, and they began to kick, and they forgot about Hashem. And as a result of that, Vayinabel Tzur Yeshuaso Yakdiu Bazarim, they served other gods. But To'evos Yachisu, they caused HaKadosh Baruch Hu to get angry by being involved in all kinds of abomination. Elohim lo yidom, chadashim mikerev bo. Vayar Hashem vayinatz HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw, and he got angry. Mikas, banav u'bnoisav. Vayomer, Hashem said, Astira panah mehem, I will hide my face from them. Let's let them work it out on their own. Erem achrisam. And the Moshe Rabbeinu continues, go through the psukim from Tezvav until Lamed Beis. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Amarti af ehem, I said that I will be angry at them, or according to the other pshat, I will scatter them, Miloshen Peah, I will scatter them throughout the world. And that's what Klal Yisrael deserved. Lulei kas oyev agur, would it not have been for the reaction of the goyim? Pen yinakru tzareimai pen yomer yadeinu rama. The goyim will say, we did it. V'lo Hashem po'al kol zos. And the Ramban explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world so that people acknowledge that He created it and thank Him for it. And if the Jewish people would be destroyed because of their Averis, there would be no country, and there would not be no country, there would be no nation in the world who will acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creating the world and thanking Him for it. And if that would be the case, then the purpose of creation will be nullified, and there will be no reason to keep the world going. That's what the Ramban says. There will be no reason to keep the world going. And therefore, even if the sum total of the Jewish people does not deserve to continue to exist, HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps us alive because some of them, and we're going to see this soon, some of them have that understanding and acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the world and thanking Him for it. The Marsha in Saita says that a Jew is called a Yehudi not because he is a grandson of Yehuda, but because of what the word means. Yehuda is Hapam Oides Hashem. The definition of a Jew is that he acknowledges HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the world and thanks Him for His and its existence. So whether or not we deserved these nisim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did them for us because they fulfill the purpose that He created the world. If you take a look in the Haftarah, the war began Erev Shabbos Kodesh, the war with Iran. It's 12 days. The Nisan began Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Ba'aloischa, and it finished 3 days before Parshas Koirach. What is the last sentence of the Haftarah of Parshas Koirach? Ki lo yitosh Hashem es amo. Hashem will not abandon His people. Why? As the Ramban says over there in Hazinu, Ba'avur Shmo HaGadol. Because the purpose of His great name, why He created the world, is fulfilled by the existence of the Jewish people. Ki ho'il Hashem lasas eschem lo la'am. HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore that He will create and keep the Jewish people as His own, because they are the only ones who do what is necessary to keep the world going, which is to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation of the world and to thank Him for our existence. That's one piece. The second theme that we have to understand here is explained by Rav Dessler in a letter that he wrote in 1948. He wrote a letter and he gave a sikha about it, explaining the events in the aftermath of the Holocaust. And he explained it based on the fifth midah. Now there are the Yud Gimel Midas Arachmim, the 13 attributes of mercy. In one version, in one variation, we have them in the Haftorah that we are going to learn by Mincha. And the other version is in the Navi Micha, which we say by Tashlich, according to some on the Shabbos Shuvah, and also by Mincha on Yom Kippur. And in that version it goes, Mikel Kamocha, No say avon v'over al pesha l'sheiris nachlaso lo hechzik lo ad apo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not keep His anger forever. And the Torah Devarah explains this as follows. Very often the Jewish people, like any child, will be worthy of being punished. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as a parent does, will punish the child. But sometimes the kid just doesn't get it. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will stop. I did it. And the midas harachamim that will ensue after the punishment is greater than the midas harachamim that was apparent before the punishment. And that, Rav Dessler explains, in a letter in Chelik Gimel of Michtav Eliyahu, explains the establishment of the State of Israel. He said HaKadosh Baruch Hu was clearly angry at the Jewish people. What the anger was for, it's not for us to say. But if 6 million Jews perish, it happened because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it to happen. But there was no mass tshuva movement after the Holocaust. But still, the einish was, now Hashem said, I am going to give you a country where a Jew can live. And as the Brisker Rav said, and I heard this from Rav Wolf of Bnei Brak, who heard it from him, the State of Israel was a divine smile, a shmeichel von Himmel. The divine smile after the Holocaust. That's the midah of lo hechzik la'ad apo. Now, whereas after the Holocaust in 1945 and afterwards, there was no great tshuva movement. Here in Eretz Yisrael, after the 74 war, there was. That's a reality. Yeshivat Ohr Somayach, and the other components of the tshuva movement, Israeli chelek, the American chelek. It may have been a little bit before, but it really took off after the Yom Kippur War. There was a awareness then as well, when the Yom Kippur War broke out, with absolutely no inkling that anyone had, no preparation, nothing. It was like, boom, it hit them. And it was a big outpouring of tshuva, and all the big Balei Tshuva, Uri Zohar, and all of his friends, they all after Yom Kippur. And for those who know, here in Eretz Yisrael as well, there has been, can't call it a sea change, because Baruch Hashem, the tshuva movement exists and is flourishing, but there have been many, many, many thousands who have been brought to emunah, full emunah, as a result of the war. Agam Berger, whose first 3 words after 500 whatever days in captivity were B'derech emunah b'charti, when 1 million people are watching. She is the poster child, I would say, of that movement. But the polls will tell you that over 50% of Yidden in Eretz Yisrael said that they had their emunah strengthened as a result of the events of Simchas Torah. So this is not like the end of the Holocaust. There is a lehechzik la'ad apoy, which corresponds to Chanun or Rachum, depending on how you learn, in the Yud Gimel Midas in Parashas Kisiso, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at us at Simchas Torah, no question. But then he did nisim for us, not to be believed. I mean, what happened in Iran, and that the President of the United States, who believes only in America first, will do something that no president ever did before. This is clearly a manifestation of Leiv Malachim B'Tzarim B'Yad Hashem, that the hearts and the decisions of kings and presidents are in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbeinu Yonah explains it, Rav Hirsch says along similar lines, everybody has Bechira because person has free will when it's relevant to yourself. But when a king, a president, a world figure makes a decision, it will impact entire nations. That's already not your private decision. That already has to do with how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. And as such, you don't have your own ability to make those decisions. And we saw that. This was against everything that his entire movement stood for. And why are we getting America involved in other things? But there's something else over here that must be mentioned. And this is not a small thing. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Vav, Nebuchadnezzar was one of the 3 people who ruled over the entire world. He was a Rasha, and he was Zoicha, bad word, to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Where did he have the power to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? And the Gemara says, what happened? Nebuchadnezzar was the scribe, or today they would call him the press secretary, of Merodach, who was the Babylonian king. Gemara in Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph. And Merodach wrote a letter when Nebuchadnezzar wasn't around to Chizkiyahu. And in the letter he said, Shalom to Chizkiyahu, Shalom to the city of Yerushalayim, Shalom le'elok HaRabba. He's saying Shalom to Hashem. And when Nebuchadnezzar heard about it, he said, you can't, if he's Elok HaRabba, how are you putting him third? You got to change the letter and put him first. Rearrange one sentence. And Merodach said, well, listen, your idea, so go find the guy who wrote the letter, who bringing the letter, and change it. And he took 3 steps. And because of those 3 steps and because of rearranging that letter, he became the most powerful individual on earth, even though he was a Rosh Marusha. When the President of the United States, you can think whatever you want of him, doesn't really matter, gets up in front of 100 million people and he gives a speech for under 4 minutes and he thanks Hashem for the success of the B-2 bombers, this is unprecedented in human history. And this was not private, like Nebuchadnezzar talking to the Melech and then chasing the messenger. It was 100 million people who watched it live and who knows how many after that. It wasn't a long speech. It was 4 minutes. It wasn't like God bless America at the end. I want to thank God. This is unheard of. And this has an effect on what happens in the world. Because that is the purpose why Hashem created the world. So that we will acknowledge that and thank Him, which is exactly what the President of the United States did. And here in Israel as well, you can think what you want of the Prime Minister, but he did go to the Kotel before to daven, and he went afterwards. And this is not a run-up to elections. He went to daven beforehand, and he went to thank Hashem afterwards. Whatever you want to say, this is unheard of. Shlomo Lawrence, a Chaver Knesset of the Aguda, writes in his book that when during the Yom Kippur War, he said to Golda Meir when she was giving speeches during the wars, he said, why don't you mention God's name? Just mention His name. And of course she gave the next speech and she didn't. So he asked her, why not? And she said to him, Mr. Lawrence, if I would have mentioned God's name, everybody in Israel would have said, oh man, we are really losing if she's up to that. It is unheard of. And if Nebuchadnezzar the Russia, in private, is zeicha to that, then a guy who is not a Russia, whatever you want to think of him, and a Jew who is not embarrassed to say, I need Hashem's help, and to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's not a small thing. But then the question becomes, okay, so there were 100,000 Yidden, 150,000 Yidden, maybe a few 100,000 more who are Ma'aminim, but how many people of the 8 billion or so people in the world really are convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world and thank Him for it? What are the percentages? And there's a fascinating comment from the Ohr Somayach in the Meshech Chochmah from Parshas Va'era. V'lokachti eschem li la'am, I will take you to me as a nation. V'hevesi eschem el haaretz, and I will bring you into Eretz Yisrael. And he quotes the Gemara on Daf Kuv Vav in Sanhedrin. And the Gemara says as follows: HaKadosh Baruch Hu did all the nisim in Mitzrayim, in the Yam, and throughout the Midbar for 2 people, 2 out of 600,000 of all the people who left Egypt. 600,000 men, besides the women and children, only 2 made it into Eretz Yisrael, Kalev and Yoshua. And the Gemara says, Makish Yitziyasam Libiyasam. 2 out of 600,000 is enough. In the days of Mashiach as well. Hashem does not need more than 2 out of 600,000. And Meir Simcha explains that when you have an electric storm, you just need a little match. You need a little spark to blow the whole thing up. When the world is in a storm, 2 Jews is enough. I'll do the math. We are a lot more, the amount of Erlich Yidin and the amount of Ma'aminim are percentage-wise a lot more than 2 out of 600,000 in the whole world. The amount of Ma'aminim compared to the 8 billion Kafrim, we're doing okay. This, Rabbi Say, the understanding that Hashem needs the Jewish people, as the Torah says, Ki ha'il eschem lases eschem le'lam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore that He is going to keep us alive, and He's going to. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to keep us alive, l'man shmei hagadol, because we as Jews are moideh, acknowledge, thank, and that is the purpose of the world. And we got the message a little. We did. As we said, over 50% felt their emunah strengthened as a result of the war. But even for those who didn't, and we as well didn't get the message like we should. But lo herzik la'ad apo, and after the terrible punishment, there is a gilui, there's a revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for the Jewish people. And you know, when the war started, when the bombing started of Iran, they closed the skies. And most Yidden were kind of like stuck in Israel. And I don't see it that way at all. Yes, it's true that for those who had medical issues or Simchas, it was hard. But you know something? We witnessed and we felt the most unbelievable manifestation of Hashem's love for us. And we were here when we felt it. You could be sitting in America, it's not the same. It's just not the same. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu kind of like made us stuck here. He says, you know, I'm going to do this for you, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to be here while it happens. Because once you're in America, it's out of sight, out of mind. You could watch everything on your handheld device, and it's still not like being there. So that was another chesed for most of us, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not let us leave. And He said, I am going to show you how much I love you, and you're going to be there to feel it. These are the events. This is the understanding of the events of the last 20 months. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us listen to the divine messages and understand how much He loves us and how much He cares for us. Ki lo yitosh Hashem es amo. Hashem will not abandon His people. Ba'avur shmo hagadol. It's so that the reason that He created the world will continue to survive and thrive. Ki hoel Hashem lasos eschem lo la'am. HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore that He is going to create us as a people and sustain us as a people. And this, Rabbi Say, is the primary message of the last 20 months.
Thank you for listening to this Ohr Somayach production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.